And welcome to this edition of Security and Compliance Weekly. We're going on the attack today, MITRE attack, that is. And to help us in our journey, we are joined today by Richard Struse, and he is the founding director of the Center for Threat-Informed Defense at MITRE. Wait, we're talking attack, but we're defending? I might be a little confused. Good thing he's here to help us. So join us as we figure it all out today, and as we continue on our journey of tearing down silos and building bridges. All of this on Security and Compliance Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production. And now, it's the show that bridges the requirements of regulations, compliance, and privacy with those of security. Your trusted source for complying with various mandates, building effective programs, and current compliance news. It's time for Security and Compliance Weekly.
Welcome to episode number 71 of Security and Compliance Weekly, recorded on April 27th, 2021. And where I'm living, it's the first day of the year that we're going to hit 80 degrees, so I'm looking forward to getting outside later. I'm, of course, your host, Mr. Jeff Mann, and joining me today as my illustrious co-hosts are Mr. Frederick Flea Lee, Mr. Josh Marpet, and Mr. Scott Lyons. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, before we get moving, we recently had a death that shook the entire information security community. Somebody that had a very big impact in the way that we do things and the way the internet runs. So, yeah, just want to put that out there. So it's a very solemn. It's a very solemn episode for us.
It is solemn, and I feel like we've been having these types of solemn episodes too frequently recently.
Yeah.
And we will certainly provide more complete coverage to the recent passing, in case anybody hasn't heard. Dan Kaminsky passed away over the weekend. We're definitely going to provide coverage on that, probably on the news segment of Paul Security Weekly this week. But as far as other announcements go, Security Weekly listeners can save $100 on their RSA Conference 2021 All Access Pass. The RSA Conference is going to be fully virtual again this year, and it's from May 17th through May 20th. And Security Weekly will be live streaming Monday through Thursday in the virtual broadcast alley. We're going to be interviewing some of the top sponsors and as well as some of the RSA speakers. And to register using the discount code to get the $100 off, go to securityweekly.com/RSAC 2021. Use the code, here we go, 5U, that's uniform, 1, cyber, ! Or as we like to say, bang. We hope to see you there. Also, if you want to stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly, visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher, subscribe on the YouTube channel, sign up for our mailing list, join our Discord server, and or follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. All righty. As I mentioned in the tag, we are joined today by Mr. Richard Struse. He is the founding director of the Center for Threat-Informed Defense. He's been at MITRE for a few years. Of course, I will introduce him and let him tell us all about himself. So without further ado, Richard, welcome to Security and Compliance Weekly.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk to all of you today.
Well, we are super excited to hear what you have to say and to tell us all about MITRE attack and probably a little bit about your center for. I left my notes. The thing about defense, and to start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you ended up. First of all, being at MITRE, maybe tell us a little bit about MITRE too, and how you ended up starting your center and getting involved in MITRE attack.
Yeah, so I think the arc of the story is as follows. I spent most of my career as a technology entrepreneur, developing software, and about 11 or 12 years ago, wound up deciding to try to give back and went to work for the U.S. government, in particular the Department of Homeland Security, And within a short time period, he became the chief technology officer for cybersecurity operations at DHS, which was known as the NCIC at the time. In that role, I probably best known as the person who saw a need for sharing real-time cyber threat intelligence and led the creation of the ATT&CK cyber threat intelligence standards, which are now OASIS standards. And my work at DHS is actually the thing that I think sort of crystallized so much of what I do today. And then I spent so much time in contexts where there was a lot of excitement and interest in technical people who saw problems, wanted to solve them, but it was really, really difficult to have effective and meaningful collaboration. The mechanics of collaboration were often too difficult. The friction was too great. And so when I moved to MITRE in 2017, I immediately set out to work to solve that problem. And co-founder of the center, John Baker, and myself really got to work to create an environment where we could actually do research and development with the private sector on a repeatable and scalable basis. And so that's the Center for Threat-Informed Defense, which we announced in November and launched in 2019. So my path has been one of going from not really being in cybersecurity at all to being in cybersecurity to now really being in the business of helping people collaborate effectively in the domain of cybersecurity. And at MITRE, the big news in cybersecurity in the last few years has been the attack knowledge base. And so that has been kind of a revolution, I think, at least in certain parts of the security landscape. And while I can lay no claim whatsoever to the creation of ATT&CK, that's a great team of people who worked on that over the years and is currently led by Adam Pennington. It's really formed the foundation of really everything we do at MITRE with respect to cybersecurity.
Interesting. So you're coming to the party at MITRE a little bit, some years after the formation of ATT&CK, and you've set up the Center for Informed Threat Defense. I mean, do you have a lot of overlap? I mean, do you have a lot of interaction on a daily basis between what you're doing and the MITRE ATT&CK framework?
Oh, absolutely. So, let me step back and actually answer a question you asked a couple of minutes ago. So for your listeners who are not familiar with MITRE, MITRE is a 63, almost 64-year-old nonprofit corporation that operates federally funded research and development centers. And people are probably aware of MITRE as the original creator and operator of CVE, Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. And but MITRE, exists to solve federal government problems. It exists to work with federal government departments and agencies to identify, critical technical problems to solve, and then work to solve them in a non-commercial, non-competitive manner. But MITRE is really all about dealing with the government. And so a couple of years ago, in 2019, MITRE created MITRE Engenuity, which is a nonprofit foundation, a technology foundation, which shares MITRE's mission, but is really focused on working with the global private sector, because the problems we face are bigger than any single country or sector or company. So the Center for Threat-Informed Defense is an entity or is an initiative within MITRE Engenuity. So
does that
we
do
work
the technology
very
transfers? Sorry, like a CIBR, does that do the technology transfer pieces? Is that what that does?
In part, we can. There's a technology transfer aspect. Really, and MITRE Engenuity has a number of different focus areas, not just cyber, including healthcare and 5G and getting into semiconductor. But yeah, I mean, so you could look at it a little bit as a CIBR kind of thing, but it's also about providing that the mechanism. So to get back to the original question of ATT&CK, so ATT&CK lives within MITRE. It's curated by MITRE ATT&CK team, as I said, led by Adam Pennington. with a great group of researchers. Our role here in MITRE Engenuity in the center is to take that work and try to make it as relevant and build on it as much as possible. So one of the things I'm sure we'll touch on later is the mapping work that we've done and are doing around ATT&CK. And we see that as sort of filling some of those gaps in the ecosystem that MITRE by itself can't fill.
So before we get too far out in front of our skis, I do need to ask you, because we're a show that's featuring compliance as much as security, and trying to explore the misconceptions and misunderstandings between the two worlds of security and compliance, and really trying to foster understanding between the two. We like to ask all of our guests what we call the hot seat question, which is simply, and I put the question to you, where do you kind of fall on what we like to call the security versus compliance continuum?
Yes.
Good answer.
Best answer yet. Well done, sir. Well done. I say again, sir. Well done.
Cheers.
Yes.
I sometimes get frustrated that, and I think in particular in the cybersecurity community, we seem to think that there is a shortage of battles to be fought. And the last time I checked, there is no shortage. I commented on something a few weeks ago on LinkedIn. It's like, we have enough adversaries. Can we stop arguing and just, focus on the adversaries that we face? But I think it's a perfectly reasonable question. And I guess as I look at it, it's really hard to imagine how you have security without somehow demonstrating compliance. That is, you can't manage what you don't measure. So the formalism of establishing sort of baseline requirements, whether they're in security or outside of security, and then building the organizational muscle memory for what it means to ideally efficiently and effectively demonstrate compliance with whatever criteria you choose to be compliant with, or you're mandated to be you're compliant with. I think that dovetails perfectly with security, because if we don't have some sort of quantifiable metrics, we don't have some goalpost, how do we know that we're doing enough? How do we know if we're doing too much? How do we know if we're putting our resources in the right place? And when we get into talking about ATT&CK in a few minutes, one of the key things I think that ATT&CK is good at is helping people sort of prioritize and understand if they are, in fact, focusing on the right problems. So I really think it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I really do think you can't have one with the other. It's really hard to imagine how you could convince someone that you're really doing a great job on security if you have none of the elements of a compliance program.
So that's a great answer, and absolutely love it. And thank you for being on the show with us today. There are industry experts and there are non-industry experts that state that the U.S. is woefully unprepared when it comes to cyber battle space, and that we need to upgrade not only our defenses but our methodologies as well as the standards that we do things by. How is the ATT&CK framework that MITRE has put out helping to further the mission of defense against other state-sponsored attacks or even corporate espionage?
Well, you take ATT&CK and you grind it into a fine powder, and then you sprinkle it over your security infrastructure. And,
350 degrees, so according to the manual.
So I think if I may, let me just, to help your listeners who may not be as familiar with ATT&CK, understand that what we're talking about when we talk about ATT&CK is a curated knowledge base of publicly reported intelligence on adversary, tradecraft, and technology. So, ATT&CK is about defining what are the adversary's goals their technical goals not there, strategic goals not there. They want to steal a lot of money or they want to destabilize the government. But what are their actual, no kidding, technical goals? I want to achieve persistence. I want to escalate privileges. I want to move laterally. I want to exfiltrate. I want to encrypt files for a ransomware attack. And then within each of those categories or tactics, we have specific techniques that adversary groups have been publicly reported to use to achieve that technical goal. So it's very much a series. It's a way of looking at adversary behavior. And so as we think about the challenges we face, one of in the country, but this is really, I don't think, specific to the U.S. There's such a range of ways that adversaries attack us, successfully achieve their objectives. They only have to be successful once. We have to be successful 100% of the time. But attack, I think, is a way of, if you understand the adversaries that are facing you, if you start to build out that threat model, you can then use attack, which is freely available to anyone in the world who wants to use it at attack.mitre.org. You can use that to then understand, okay, if these are the kinds of adversaries that are attacking my organization, or I believe are attacking or targeting my organization, then here is the tradecraft that they've been reported to have used in the past, and therefore lacking any other intelligence about where to start, that's a good place to start.
I have to interject very quickly that, I've known about MITRE as an organization probably since my DoD times back in the 80s. I've known several people that have worked not just in cybersecurity at MITRE, because they do think tank stuff for other departments of the government.
Jeff, was that when the rocks were soft and the dirt was young?
Yeah, and I used to ride my dinosaur to work. But
hey, don't knock the T-Rex, bro.
Thinking of MITRE, or knowing what I know of MITRE as being, very, kind of and then this is just my perception, I guess, very brainiac organization, think tank, bring in the best of the brightest to solve the hardest problems, tend to be a little bit nerdy, geeky, twitchy sometimes, and then lay the government role over top of that, especially classified projects and things like that. All that to say, it's very refreshing because you come from the private industry first and are only recently indoctrinated into MITRE. The caliber of some of your responses so far has been very refreshing. I attribute that to the fact that you haven't been at MITRE too long. So keep it up, keep going. It's been fun. People are enjoying it on the Discord.
I'm sure my MITRE colleagues will love that. What I'd say, though, is, the great thing about MITRE is it really is a rare beast in that while most of the work that MITRE does is focused on the federal government, we also have the ability to carve out small research projects. And that's actually how ATT&CK started back around 2012. And Blake Strom, Jen Miller Osborne, and a couple of other people got together and we're trying to solve an operational problem that MITRE had at one of their sites, was trying to understand, frankly, about the movements of adversaries and could they detect and how could they even reason about adversary behavior. And that led to the organic development. Someone fired up Excel one day and, they started putting stuff into rows and columns. And next thing you know, ATT&CK was born. Fast forward to 2015, and a really, I think, wise decision was made to make this work publicly available. Again, this was MITRE internal research. This is not government information at all. And when it was opened up in 2015, MITRE is not known for its world-class marketing, but word of mouth spread. And by the time I arrived to MITRE in 2017, ATT&CK was already a growing phenomenon, rapidly growing phenomenon, simply based on the quality of the work. The quality, the thoughtfulness of the team that was curating the ATT&CK contributions. And just to be clear, ATT&CK, the data in ATT&CK, the knowledge in ATT&CK is actually contributed largely now by external entities the attack team vets and correlates that information, makes sure that it's sort of stands up. But everything in attack, we footnote all our work so you can go and check our homework. So it's a really great body of work. Again, internal research project of MITRE. Now the Center for Threat-Informed Defense is helping sustain that. And that's why we're really excited about the kinds of additional resources that we're able to bring in to the community, like the mappings that I'm sure we're going to talk about, because attack by itself is super useful for people with the resources and sophistication, but for somebody who's just trying to answer a simple question of, am I good enough? Am I compliant enough? Do I have a control that mitigates this particular kind of behavior? It can be kind of hard to do that. So we're trying to make that easier.
No, I love the direction that attack has been going, Richard. And I was actually kind of curious because it feels like MITRE attack is now almost like a de facto standard / benchmark. And we're seeing a lot of people in the industry build this into their tools. I'm actually kind of curious, what you would like to see from the private sector with regards to actually, utilization of the attack framework, and also what do you think about them actually also contributing back? And I love the fact that now MITRE is really being a little bit more prominent in getting the industry involvement. It's phenomenal now that we're actually seeing people that were formerly competitors effectively collaborating now to make some fundamentally just basic security standards.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thanks. I mean, what MITRE and MITRE Engenuity play this interesting role. We're not government, but we're also not competing against the commercial entities out there in any particular way, and that allows us to be agile. It allows us to be really innovative, but at the same time, we can be that sort of agreed to common language for describing whether it's adversary behavior. We have some work that's going on now in the deception space to help people to sort of bring some order to that landscape. And I think that's the thing that both the vendors and customers really appreciate, is that they can come to MITRE, look at attack, use the resources in attack, and all speak the same language. And it sounds so simple, but it is actually a really big deal that we have a consistent way of referring to terminology of vendors now mapping their products and their capabilities to attack. So they'll give you a stoplight chart of what they protect against in attack or what they can detect. And then my colleague Frank Duff in MITRE Engenuity has the MITRE the attack evaluations program, where vendors come and Frank and his team are the basically red team their products in a test environment, and they release the results for everyone to see. And if they just released those results last week, really interesting to sort of level the playing field there with information.
I love that y'all are doing that, and this is like a shout out, I think, to MITRE in general. And I think it's one of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of. Like MITRE, at least in my experience, has also kind of functioned as almost like a underwriter's lab / UL. I mean, like they're going actually testing out products and effectively giving an unbiased opinion. On my side, I went through that with static analysis, and I'm kind of curious, like how are vendors responding to having these assessments done by MITRE and the results published, literally just publicly?
Well, first of all, if you were tracking last week, every vendor, came out and claimed they won. The interesting thing is the attack evaluations doesn't rank or score or declare winners or losers. They just do the evaluations, and they do a really, really good job of documenting everything they've done and then making every last bit of that information available to the public. The vendors, I think, ultimately welcome the fact that there's a common way of looking at the landscape. And instead of trying to convince your customers and explain to your customers half of what's going on, you can start to, the vendors can start to come into an environment that's already sort of attack knowledgeable, knowing that they already know enough so you can just very quickly say, we do this, 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 this in the matrix. So I think it makes it actually easier for the vendors. And frankly, the vendors who have good technology and bright people, they don't fear the sort of having the information out there about how they've done in an objective test. I think they welcome that. And honestly, what we've seen, and again, this is my colleague Frank Duff's program, not mine, but we've seen vendors really, when they don't do well in a particular part of the evaluation, they very quickly address that. So that's the great thing about it being, evidence-based. They really can't hide behind too much. So we've seen the vendors really up their game in a lot of different areas. And I think Frank's written about that some, that we're seeing the vendors step up. So the vendors win, they get real clear feedback about their products. The customers win because they get better products to choose from. And they also have an information resource now that allows them to differentiate between, if you really care about lateral movement, you can look at a product suite and say, is that good at lateral movement detection? And so it's really been exciting to see how that has evolved. The other thing that we're doing in MITRE Engenuity is our MITRE Attack Defender program, which was just recently launched about a month and a half ago, which is really to try to democratize access to high quality threat-informed defense related training and then skills assessment. So it's using a fundamentally different model to really lower and eliminate as many barriers as possible to people gaining expertise in the use of attack and related areas, and then demonstrating their proficiency. So we kind of see it a three-legged stool. You have MITRE Attack Defender helping people get smart about all things threat-informed defense. You have attack evaluations that's focused on bringing objective data about how products actually perform. And then my organization, the Center for Threat-Informed Defense, is there really trying to identify the either gaps in the state of the art or the state of the practice, and then develop impactful research and development projects to fill those gaps.
Yeah,
Hey, Richard,
I love that third leg. I'm actually kind of curious, Richard, like on the Ingenuity side, are you seeing, essentially adversaries adjusting based on things that, is being listed in the attack framework, saying like, hey, now this is now public knowledge, effectively these tactics are, burned. Are you actually seeing attackers now, effectively reacting to the fact that that attack is now a well-adopted framework? Yeah.
Yeah, adapting to that.
Yeah, so great question. And the answer is not yet. And the reason I say yet is we just launched and started publicly talking about a project we call our Sightings ecosystem in the center, which is about collecting voluntary contributions of telemetry data. That is, I saw technique 1, 2, 3, 4 from the attack matrix in my environment at timestamp time, sending that to us. We anonymize it, we normalize it, and put that in a giant data set to start to be able to look at relative frequency of different attack techniques, co-occurrence of techniques, either as a set or in sequence, and then look at how that data set changes over geography, over targeted sector, and over time. So that work is just beginning, building on a pilot that MITRE had run for the last couple of years. But I really am hopeful, because I think in maybe the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to start to have the ability to answer that question, the ability to see if we are having an impact on the adversaries. Because ultimately, if we don't impose costs on the adversary, if we don't make it more difficult and more expensive for them to do what they're doing, why do we think they're going to do anything different? So I'm really excited about what that sightings ecosystem will be able to tell us. We at DHS we talk about shared situational awareness, which means many things to many people. But to my mind, having an awareness, a shared awareness of what adversaries are doing, what's trending, what's falling off, how adversaries attack different industries or different geographies differently, I think is going to be really helpful data for defenders to use to help prioritize where they should be putting their security investments in.
Richard, some of the people on Discord are joking and not joking about how security and compliance is still like, the different levels of maturity. I think we've got it as 1, no budget, no people; 2, 1 person, no budget. It goes all the way up to 4, team, still no training; and then 5, effective. I mean, they're joking, but Sticks and Taxi are amazing. Don't get me wrong. Big fan, but only for a team that can actually take advantage of them. Okay. What do they do, and what is on the what's coming down the pike, if you will, for the small to medium, for the company that doesn't have a team that can take advantage of that kind of thing? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the threat and intelligence, direct use of attack, quite frankly, is a rich man's game. It's for those organizations that have the resources and the expertise and the time in the day to actually focus on those things. And that's a problem. I mean, that's not to say that organizations, and those are all, the center members. We have 25 private sector organizations that are members, and they're all exactly those kinds of sophisticated, well-resourced entities. But if that's all we help, we're missing the boat, which is why all of the center research and development we make freely available to the world, just like ATT&CK makes everything available to the world. But in terms of actually applying it, that's where we look to the vendor community. We look to NGOs, whether it's Global Cyber Alliance, Cyber Threat Alliance, Center for Internet Security. They've been great partners with us, and the ISACs and ISAOs. But ultimately, I think the solution for 95% of businesses, they're never going to know about Sticks and Taxi. They're never going to know about ATT&CK. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't make sure that all of those technologies and all of that knowledge we should do everything possible to make sure that's baked into whatever solutions they use. However, so they're blissfully ignorant, but being protected by that work.
Transparency. So basically make it transparent to them, but make it so that they are protected even if they don't know it.
Right. I mean, we don't expect people to become mechanics to drive a car, right? So, but we kind of expect that to safely and securely operate any kind of non-trivial computer environment.
No, that totally makes sense. I respect that. Mm-hmm.
Hey, we need to take a break, but before we do, could you expound, just for the benefit of those who may not be aware of certain acronyms, very briefly, Richard, or even Josh, since you brought it up, what are and is our Taxi and Sticks?
Well, Taxi is back there. See.
Yep.
So Sticks and Taxi.
Trust me, the first 10 minutes of Discord, people were talking about your license plate, and it just went off on
the Knott's book tangent. And the license plate, and yeah.
You know how many license plates I had to steal to make that? So no, I didn't steal any license plates.
If only you had the website somebody posted.
Would you say you were working as a threat actor?
What are Sticks and Taxi? So Sticks and Taxi are technical standards now governed by OASIS and the Cyber Threat Intelligence Technical Committee, which I have the honor of co-chairing along with my colleague Trey Darley. They are technical standards for the representation and in transfer of actionable threat intelligence, so indicators of compromise, information about threat actors and campaigns, TTPs. Those are, just Sticks is the data representation. So how you describe those things, and then Taxi is a communications protocol running on top of HTTPS that allows entities to exchange that information. For example, all of the all of the attack knowledge base is has an underlying Sticks2 representation. And if you go to the ATT&CK GitHub site, you can actually, get that Sticks2 JSON, and MITRE actually operates a Taxi2 server that people use from around the world to get access to it. So they're really just plumbing. I mean, important plumbing, but again, most of humanity should never know what they are, but they're important plumbing to get, seamless. The goal is seamless multi-vendor interoperability. So if I have threat intelligence and I want to send it to you, we just exchange it, as opposed to worrying about formats and either the syntax or semantics of the underlying data. That's all taken care of with the STIX and TAXII standards.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll take a quick break. We'll come back, and as Richard's alluded to a couple times, we'll sort of dig in a little bit to the mechanics of attack. What is it? What does it look like? How does it work? And we'll hopefully explore further the way it impacts and can impact security and compliance. So take a quick break. We'll be right back.